You're watching News at Prime. Let's take you back now to the 7th of November in 2023. I had an interview with Mr. Mthunzi Mdwaba. Mdwaba made allegations about Sabelo Skiti. This is a journalist, an investigative journalist with the Sunday Times. Mr. Skiti filing a complaint, though, alleging that Newzroom Afrika did not offer him a right of reply and that we had failed to provide him with an opposing point of view during that interview. So the PCCSA finding that we still needed to provide the opposing point of view during that interview. Well, Mr. Skiti is with me in studio today to set the record straight. Good evening to you, and thank you for your time.
Evening, Goli. Evening to the viewers as well.
Indeed. So let's go back to that particular interview, because Mr. Mdwaba makes a statement about you, and that statement is to the effect that you are in the same WhatsApp group with people that are intent on blocking this 500 or 5 billion jobs deal that he claimed to have had with the Department of Labor. How do you respond to him today?
Cody, thank you for the opportunity. I think from the outset, is just set the record straight properly. The ruling of the PCCSA not only stated that the channel failed to actually give an opposing point of view, they reprimanded them for that. And I think it's an important ruling in the sense that it validates the journalism that we do. You know, for an example, I mean, on that story, I spent close to a month investigating, sourcing information, corroborating the corroboration of information, you know, verifying all the facts that we had before we got there. And the effect of Mr. Mdwaba's statements, who in that entire period had evaded actually responding to pertinent questions that were put to him about the deal itself. The effect of those statements that he had was that it nullifies, you know, the work that has been put, the journalism that has been done to produce that work, you know, that ultimately led to that contract being cancelled by the Department of Labor and them going to court wanting to get it set aside. So the true facts of it, Toli, is that everything that Mr. Mdwaba said there about me is not only factually incorrect, it was spurious. And as I'd said before, it was designed to actually take away from the heat that he was feeling from the facts contained in the articles that we had published.
And so, is it your view, therefore, that the view he holds against you, or at least the views that he expressed in that interview about you, all of those emanated from possibly this deal being cancelled in part because of the investigative work that you did?
I think it's pretty clear, Koli. I mean, if you recall, the fellow actually said in that interview that this was his deal, and he wants it, you know. So it was very clear that he was frustrated, and I understand him. I mean, it's 5 billion rand that he would have gotten without a shred of due diligence being done by the entity that was offering him that amount of money. He was very frustrated, and I think, you know, for us as journalists, and I think it's important that we put it out there, we are prone to being attacked, you know, living in the society that we live in. And we've developed thick skins, and it never really, you know, matters when people say what they say, when they do it on social media, even when they say it to you in person, you know, but it's when they actually go and they attempt to use credible platforms such as yourselves to actually launch these attacks, because when the viewers are sitting there at home, the automatic assumption is that it's being said live on air on a news channel. And there must be a shred of truth to it.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point I want to go to next, because I'd like for you to highlight the risks of not challenging those claims, ignoring those claims, what that does for the work that you and I do.
Yeah. Well, I think I mean, the damage is immeasurable, you know. Especially if you consider that we are actually now living in a post-truth, you know, sort of setup where a lot of people can just come onto any platform and say whatever it is that they want to say without actually giving any backing. And I think the distinction, you know, in journalism, and I mean, you see this in the fact that we've got the codes that we have, is in the fact that we have to put in the work. We have to corroborate each and every single allegation that an individual makes.
Yeah.
And I think when you're an investigative journalist, we almost used to say, you know, when we sit, is that by the time you publish the story, any prosecutor must be able to lift that article and go and formulate a charge sheet. So, I mean, that's the sort of standard that we give ourselves, in the sense that we go through all of the information thoroughly to ensure that the product that we're putting it out there, in some circumstances, will leave no doubt as far as we can as to why we are making the claims that we make when we write these articles.
Yeah. Perhaps let me sway the conversation slightly away from the matter that you are here for, because, as you say, it's important that we check information, corroborate where we need to. This period that we're in, for example, it's election season. Politicians are going to say things, people are going to say things, and sometimes it is going to be difficult for a journalist to do fact-checking while he sits in front of me like you. The advice that you would give to fellow colleagues who are going to be in the field and who are going to be told information, what is it that we can do in order to make sure that we hold those people to account purely based on the statements that they say?
Look, Polly, I think information is king. You know, for me, I believe in information, so it means that before we go out onto the field, you know, if there's a walkabout in a community, read up as much as you can about that specific community. The chances are that that politician is going to reference whatever he's seeing on the ground. Find out what has been said before by that politician about that particular community. What's the context of the visit? What is happening around that particular politician? So that when they do come up with these, you are armed with enough facts and information to then push back and say, but hang on, we're talking about water crisis right now. But what we're not talking about is the fact that the state has spent billions of rands bringing in Cuban engineers, for instance. We've had campaigns such as war on leaks. But what we've seen is that water losses through leaks have actually shot through the roof since we've had those, campaigns. So what has happened? And I mean, what is different about what it is that you are saying now? I think it's very important that we put those questions to the politicians to hold them to account. Finally,
are you taking any action against Mr. Mdwaba based on the statements that he said?
Look, Polly, I think for me, the important thing was to sort of stand up for journalism, also hold us as journalists accountable, you know, when the ball has been dropped. I'm not planning to take any action against Mr. Mdwaba. I think he's got enough problems as it is. He owes, I think, the finance minister about R1 million, related to the defamatory things he had said about him with regards to this deal as well. I understand that Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande had also said that he's intending to sue him. In fact, now I think the court just needs to issue judgment in the matter where the Department of Labour wants to have that contract set aside. I don't know Mthunzi Mdwaba from a bar of soap. I have no interest in him making a living or not making a living. But what I could not countenance was the fact that public funds were going to be taken, in a contract that was signed at midnight on a Sunday, and that these were never going to be accounted for.
Sabelo Skiti, thank you very much, and keep doing the work that you do.
Thank you, sir.
Sunday Times investigative journalist coming in to set the record straight.